So let's have a little look then at this story. Police arresting 45 people on Thursday after protesters in south-east London forced the Home Office to abandon efforts to transport dozens of migrants to the Bibby Stockholm barge. So these are the activists that surrounded and blocked a coach in Peckham that had arrived to take asylum seekers from the hotel down to Dorset. Very simple stuff, but the protesters had the hump about this, understood to have been organised by a coalition of left-wing student groups, Black Lives Matter, local refugee charities and a group of teachers who teach migrants English. Good God. Joining us to discuss this, Executive Director at Migration Watch, Mike Jones, is with us. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, Mike, when I see these kind of things. We've sort of seen this before. I seem to remember some people standing up trying to stop a flight taking off because they wanted to save the poor man who was going to be sent back. Turned out that he was a habitual sex offender and rapist, and, you know, everybody had red faces all round. But don't let that bit of inconvenience stand in the face of the good and the great who want to take the law into their own hands, it seems.
Well, yeah, the protesters are political extremists, and the mob won. You know, despite the menacing atmosphere, the criminal damage, you know, wanton violence and aggressive behaviour, there didn't seem to be, you know, any police in riot gear. No horses, no police action to speak of. They basically just sat on their hands and allowed the situation to escalate. Yeah. And yeah, the government couldn't perform one of its basic duties, which was, you know, transferring asylum seekers from a hotel to an alternative means of accommodation. You know, we can all agree or disagree on whether the Bibby Stockholm is a good use of taxpayers' money, but that's beside the point. You know, the fact is we must respect the rule of law and the ability of democratically elected politicians to fulfil their duties. And that didn't happen.
Yeah, well, what's the deal here then with, I mean, do the police, do you think, actively take a standoff position on this kind of thing?
Quite possibly, but I think there is definitely some merit to the idea that there is two-tier policing. You know, sort of left-wing and radical left-wing protesters are treated with kids' gloves. They're treated very differently to, say, you know, nationalist or right-wing protesters, or, you know, even football fans, where, you know, the full force of the law comes down on them. You know, my view is quite simple. If protests turn violent, if they cross the red line, if they're illegal in any way, you know, the police should use all means possible to quell them. But again, we're seeing a discrepancy between how different protest movements are policed.
In terms of where we are now, then, we understand the coach is there, but nobody's on it.
No, that's correct. But unfortunately, the protesters won this time. And that's very specific to what they're trying to do. I mean, what's really interesting is there are a number of organizations involved in this, and journalists haven't really dug deep into them. For example, one of the groups involved was the Movement for Justice by Any Means Necessary. Now, if you read their website, this is what they have to say. We can't win if we place our trust in the powers that be, the parliamentary system, law courts, elections, etc.
Wow.
And we can't allow any of those institutions to determine how we fight. Now, you might think this is just a ragtag group of scruffy students with, you know, very misguided ideologies. But actually, this organization has lobbied MPs, and they have a campaign called Widen Windrush. And this campaign has been supported by MPs like David Lammy, Diane Abbott, Dawn Butler, Lucy Powell, Caroline Lucas of the Greens, Peter Grant of the SNP. You know, why are politicians giving these political extremists who clearly don't believe in the rule of law and the parliamentary system, why are they normalizing this sort of action? And, you know, it doesn't just stop there. I mean, there was one demonstrator who gave a comment to the Daily Telegraph. He or she was from an organization called GMA's Community Kitchen. Yeah. You know, they're a sort of social enterprise. They provide, you know, food to asylum seekers. And this demonstrator said, we are trying to stop police deporting migrants. Now, GMA's Community Kitchen is, you know, a sort of social enterprise, and it's actually funded by the National Lottery. Now, why are they funding organizations where their staff are engaging in these sorts of violent and illegal protests.
Yeah, it's sort of professional anti-establishmentarians who do not recognise the rule of law in any of its forms or institutions, by their own admission.
Yeah, absolutely. But the fact is that police and politicians really need to take a hard look at this. And the idea of two-tier policing, there need to be, consistent procedures and ways that police proceed with these kind of protests. You can't have one standard for one group or one ideology and another standard for the other. But of course, whether the Conservatives respond to this is another matter.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we'll watch with interest. Listen, Mike, thank you very much indeed for that. He is Mike Jones, Executive Director at Migration Watch.